All right, in this campfire particles assignment, we have three parts we need to worry about. One, we need to animate this campfire right here so that it moves kind of like a stylized cartoony fire. The next thing we're going to do is add materials, and then we're going to follow that up by adding particles. So to start this off, what we're going to do is select our fire here, and in the object data properties, which is this green triangle, we have shape keys. Click plus, and that gives us a basis. This we do not want to change, okay? So do not touch this one. Let's just click lock right there. Lock it so you can't change it. Click the plus again, and we have key 1. Now we can change this. So we're going to go into edit mode. So up at the top left, we have object mode. We want to go to edit mode. Another way to do that is press tab. Tab will toggle in and out of edit mode. Now, with edit mode on, I'm just going to select some of the faces here and just move them around to something that makes kind of sense, I guess. Just move it around, something like a flicker. Okay, that's probably good. I'll go back into object mode and it should swap back to basis. There you go, went back to its original shape. Now what we want to animate is this right here, the value of key 1. So we're going to kind of animating it, go back and forth so it looks like a flickering fire. So to start off, we're on frame 1 here. We're going to put a keyframe by clicking on this dot here. We'll set the keyframe, and I'm going to move my timeline. Now we could just keep adding the keyframe by clicking that, or I can turn on auto key. So I'm going to turn on auto key, and I'm going to move the value slider. So I'm going to move it up and down. So I'm going to move the timeline, just kind of random where I'm moving it. Doesn't matter, just as long as it's not too spaced apart. We don't want it to go slow. So move the timeline, move the slider, and make sure you're going back and forth, not forward and forward or back and back. Okay, so I'm just going to do a few of these. And I'll do one more. Okay, and then I'm going to select these keyframes. I'm going to right click and duplicate or press Shift D. Okay, duplicate, and I'm going to move those keyframes. Let's select all these now, duplicate, and I'll duplicate one more time because we want it to go to the end of our timeline. So when I press play, we have a little moving campfire. So that's the end of part 1. We're going to add materials. So I'm going to go back to frame 1 here so we can see it. I'm going to go back to this. So frame 1, I'm going to add materials to this. Right now we can only see gray no matter what. So remember, we have up in the top right, we have wireframe, solid view, material preview, and rendered view. So we'll go into rendered view. Let's add a material to our fire first. We're going to click on this beach ball looking icon. That's the material icon. Click new. And then what we want to do is add emission to it. Emission emits light. So I'm going to change the color, and then I'm going to change the strength. Now right now it's not doing anything. We have to do a couple of things to make it emit light. So we're going to go back to our render settings here. It's this one that looks like the backside of a digital camera. And we're going to turn on ray tracing. And that will make it so that this emissive light actually emits light to the other objects. Now you'll see it's really noisy. That's because of the way that we are tracing the light. So there's two ways to fix that. We can increase our samples. So right now it's 16. We could go higher. That'll make the noise smaller. And then our resolution here we'll set 1, 1. So it's still a little noisy, but when we render our image, it will be smooth. So the next thing, I'll just add some materials to these trees. I'll just make them green. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just setting up the scene a little bit. Let's add something to the ground. Okay, let's add something to this wood here. Okay, and I'll just leave the rocks gray. So now we have all of our materials set up. We want to add a little glow. So what we're going to do, this is a little bit different than what we've been used to. Up at the top, we're going to click the compositing layout. We're going to click use nodes so that we have our nodes. And we're going to change this window down here to be our 3D view. So I'm going to click this top left icon and I'm going to switch it to 3D viewport. So now I have my campfire in view. I'll just move around and I'm going to go back to rendered view so we can see it. And then we're going to add something to the compositor right here. I'm going to go to the add menu, filter, and then glare. We're going to make it so there's some bloom on this thing. Now we can't see it because we need to turn it on in our viewport. So we will click this drop down next to the render icon, and on compositor we have disabled, camera, and always. So disabled is what it's at now. Camera will only show it when you're in the camera view, and always will always show it. So when I turn that on, you can now see what we have here. And we can change, there's some options here, so like fog glow, simple star, bloom, that's really bright. I'll do fog glow. And then you can change some of these values. You want to probably leave the mix alone because if mix is 1, then you're only going to see the glow. If it's -1, you won't see anything. So we'll just leave that at 0. And you can also change the quality. So there's high quality, there's low quality. Okay, so that's what we're going to do for the material setup. And then you'll also want to animate the emission strength here on the fire. So let's go back to our animation tab here. And we need to turn on always in this as well if we want to see that. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my material tab, hover over this, and you can press I or you will click on that dot. Okay, and we have auto key on. So we have a keyframe on our material. So all I'm going to do is just go back and forth. I don't want to go too far. I don't want to like the fire's turning off. Okay, something like that. Okay, we'll just duplicate that a bunch. Okay, so now our fire's kind of glowing, changing. All right, so that was part 2. Part 3, our particle system. What we're going to do is add in a new plane. So we're going to go to Add, Mesh, Plane, and this will be our particle emitter. And then we're going to do one more thing. So we need 2 things. We need a particle emitter and we need the particle itself. Okay, so we're going to make little embers coming out of the fire. We click Add, Mesh, and we'll just add a cube. Okay, I'm going to move this down here. And on the cube, I'm going to give it that emission material that we already have. So it glows. Okay, and then on this, I'll probably move that below the ground so we don't see it as well. So I'm going to give it a particle system, and that's this tab here. It looks like one ball splitting into 3. Then I'm going to click plus, and then I'm going to push play, and you'll see what happens. Okay, so right now it's emitting these things. These are called halos, and we'll talk about all those settings and how to change it. So first off, let's take a look at what happens with our particles. So everything dies right here, and at frame 200, it's all going to stop. So we need to change our end frame. I'll put it above where the end of the timeline is, just so it keeps going. And then the lifetime is 50 frames, but we can do random lifetime so that some die sooner than others. Now it is just kind of random which particles are dying sooner. Okay, now we need to make it go up. It's falling down. That's not really the behavior that we want. So we're going to go to the physics tab and we're going to change it from Newtonian physics to fluid. And then we're going to add buoyancy, because buoyancy is like when things float in water. So we're going to add buoyancy to it. You don't want to go super high, so I'll show you what happens with that. So everything's just like flying straight up. So we can adjust this to a lower number. Viscosity is like how much the particles might stick to each other, which you may want to do. Right now it looks like bubbles though. We don't want that. We want to add this glowing ember here. So we're going to scroll down, and under render, we're going to change it from halo to object. And then we need to choose an object. So I'm going to click this eyedropper here and select this. Okay, so now I have those. And then our scale is all the same. It doesn't really look like embers yet. It's all kind of the same. So I'm going to change the scale randomness right here. Let's move that up to 1. And I might even lower the scale in general just so that nothing's that big. And if we wanted to add some force fields, we could do that. So you go to add, force field, we could add a wind. Let's just kind of rotate it to where we want it to go. Oh, I have auto key on, so I animated the position of the force field. There's some other settings that we can do on the particles to just kind of vary up, because everything's kind of moving really uniformly. So let's look at the physics tab and see what we can do there. So we can add some Brownian effect, which will kind of randomize the motion a little bit. Let's just pull it. There we go. So that might be too random. We lower that. That way they're all kind of going in some different directions. It's not just straight up. So that's this assignment. Good luck.